All right. How about now?
That was me that time. I messed up, but I don't see audio hijack recording my Skype side.
I don't actually need it. I just use the Skype track to line up the two.
Oh, okay.
So I can do it with just the Skype side from mine too. Not a big deal.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, good evening.
That was weird. Good evening to you as well.
Yeah, I know. I assumed it was me just because I haven't rebooted the Mac in, I don't know, like months.
Well, it made me think, do you start recording an audio hijack and then answer the call, or do you start recording after you've answered the call on Skype?
Normally I start recording and then answer.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I messed up because I called and then pushed record. I don't know. I feel like it was weird there, but I don't know why I'm not getting a recording at all. It's weird.
Well, do you want to end it and start over and just see?
No, it's okay. It's okay. I think we'll be fine.
Well, then we'll call this the beginning, and I'll start with good evening again.
Good evening. How are you this evening?
I'm not too bad. How about you?
Personally, I'm okay. Maybe a little frustrated with what I assume will be our first topic.
Well, after the follow-up, I'd have a couple of really quick follow-up items because I was a bad Liverpool fan and couldn't remember the name of the recent signing from Wolverhampton.
Oh yes, who's the recent signing?
Diogo Jota, and I said I couldn't remember if it was Diogo or Diego.
Oh yeah. Diogo. Yeah, that sounds. It fits the last name and the first name fit when it's Diogo.
Yeah, so we signed him as a forward from Wolverhampton, and he scored his first Premier League goal for Liverpool in his debut.
Excellent. It's a good way to start.
Yeah, not so good with this past match week, but I'm sure we'll get into that as well.
So there was also a follow-up on Peacock can still go to hell?
Yeah, this past match week, launching Peacock, I could not find the Liverpool match on Sunday. I had to find it through NBC Sports, which means that the feathered rainbow conglomerate can go to hell. I can't think of a better way to put it. Like, if I'm paying for Peacock Premium, I should be able to see anything on any of the affiliated Peacock networks, in my opinion.
Yeah, so I saw an ad because I watched Arsenal win, thankfully, 2-1, and I saw in an ad or a promo Rebecca Lowe. I guess she might be the primary announcer for the Premier League on NBC, but she said it's like a little over 170 matches can be streamed live this season. And then it's over 300 matches that can be watched after they've been played, but only a little over half can be streamed.
Yeah, it's kind of the same rant that I have with ESPN Plus. Like, why would I pay you a subscription and only be able to get what you have determined to be ESPN Plus content, not any of the affiliated ESPN channels?
Probably boils down to contracts with the Premier League. I don't know.
Yeah. Either way, it's kind of ridiculous that you have to end up subscribing to 3 or 4 different things to be able to watch everything.
At that point, you almost have cable.
Oh, I'm pretty sure I'm paying more than I was paying for cable now when you take everything into consideration.
Yeah, but you're getting a lot more interesting content and fewer commercials.
Well, that's the selling point. The problem is I don't use the rest of the content. Like, the only thing that I want is the Premier League matches. That's it. I don't care about the other content. Just give me all of the Premier League matches. Or not even all of them, just all of the Liverpool matches, because I don't care so much about the others. But yeah, it's still a mess. It is still something that is in dire need of overhaul and probably will not see any change in the foreseeable future.
I think you're right about that. Was there any other follow-up you had?
No. One thing that I didn't put a note in, I think last week's episode there were some recording issues on both of our parts, and tonight I'm trying a slightly different setup to alleviate that. I noticed last week I kept shifting a bit because I couldn't quite get comfortable with the just physical space I was in for last week. And I think I kept moving in relation to the mic, which manifested itself in some difficulty trying to normalize stuff in last week's episode. So I am intentionally setting up in a place where I can be mindful of that this week, and we'll see how it goes.
I'm hoping that my side of the recording isn't terrible. It's like I am in the midst of rearranging the office that I record in, and I'm at a different desk with right next to a wall. I put a towel up to sort of hopefully capture or disperse my, reduce echo or so forth, something like that, so that it's not too hard for you to record with or edit with. So here's hoping.
Yeah, at this point it sounds fine. We'll see. I didn't realize how my shifting affected the recording until I was over 3/4 of the way through editing.
Oh, wow.
And at that point it was like, well, I'm not going to go back and redo what I've done. I'll just deal with what I perceive as issues with audio quality. And I mean, we don't really, I know of one confirmed listener just because of some feedback today, but
oh, we have feedback.
Well, sort of. So friend of the show, Juan Felipe, has a podcast called The Noob Guy, and he referenced us on his most recent episode.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know he had a podcast. It's going to go into my podcast that I listen to.
Yeah, the most recent episode was imploring people to exercise their right and privilege to vote, and so I can certainly get behind that, but I don't want to necessarily go into that discussion because I think it might be a good opportunity for us to have our first guest and talk through it with him.
Yes, that would be fun. I think that's a great idea.
But that pretty much does it for follow-up for me. Like I said, it was quick. The most of today I've spent just shaking my head at the current state of affairs. So I don't know if you had anything prior to going into that topic or not.
No, I'm ready to dive right in.
I've seen so many general statements that baffle me at how anyone can believe that our current president, just in case someone listening doesn't know who that is, it's Donald Trump, has anyone's interest in mind other than his and his ability to be reelected at any given time. And multiple different things kind of illuminated that over the past 24 hours or so in the news cycle. One of those things being downplaying the seriousness of COVID, and one of those things being the end of any and all negotiations on any type of economic stimulus until after the election.
Yeah, one, I think to see a tweet come out and the stock market be so adversely affected from, are they up, is it 132 characters now? Whatever.
It's 240, I think.
Yeah. So a small message have such a huge impact on so much. Not that, this year has, if it wasn't clear before, the year 2020 has demonstrated that the stock market does not mean the state of the stock market doesn't mean the state of the economy is doing well if the stock market's doing well. But it does affect a lot of people, and that's just the small, intense, immediate side effect. The whole idea of just right now their only business is pushing their Supreme Court nominee through before the election. It's hypocritical because they wouldn't let Obama fill 2 seats when he had a year left in his term. So there's just so much that's despicable about this man and his administration.
Yeah, and I certainly will go on record as saying I'm not qualified in any way, shape, fashion, or form to speak about anything in the political landscape, but it's not going to stop me. And, politics, I can't remember who the quote was attributed to, and so that may be a piece of follow-up because I think it might be illuminating to go back and figure it out. But politics has always been about the art of the possible. That's how it was kind of paraphrased. Because the idea is that any two groups or multiple groups are going to come to the table with an agenda, and they're going to want their agenda, and they're going to push hard for their agenda. And at the end of the day, anything in politics is about compromising your agenda to meet some of the demands of the opposing side or sides, and being able to pass through something that advances government or society in a positive fashion, even though all sides don't get what they want. So all sides walk away relatively, I wouldn't say displeased, but definitely not happy with the arrangement because they didn't get everything they wanted. And we haven't had any of that for 4 years.
No. I actually, I'm going to create some follow-up for myself by referencing an episode of The West Wing that I don't remember season or episode, but I do recall an episode where they show the Democrats wanting a particular thing and the Republicans wanting another thing, and they just showed both sides of how it's built. I know that shows a very pie in the sky, very optimistic view of government, but it showed like whether you were left leaning, it's like, okay, I understand the left. If you're right leaning, I understand the right. If you're, you understood the other side, and you say, I get what you're doing. I disagree with it, but I understand it, and you're not wrong. It's just that we have to come to some sort of middle ground to get something done. And so I'll find that episode and have it ready for next week.
It'll be interesting to see if it's an episode that I've seen yet or not, since we're still working our way through The West Wing.
I think it's pretty early on in the run, so maybe.
But it definitely kind of leads to the current climate, because I'm going to make an analogy here that's not necessarily apt in a lot of ways, but I think it kind of correlates well. Historically, when Steve Jobs was running Apple, he was known for creating his own reality, and it was often referred to as the Apple distortion field or Steve Jobs distortion field, or multiple different phrases around that. And this administration seems to have its own version of that, where I couldn't tell you how half of anything that I see correlates to the reality of life as we know it. And I hate to use that analogy because I actually think that in the case of Jobs, it was definitely meant in a way to advance things in a positive fashion. I don't think he was, in any way, I don't think he was attempting to be malevolent or guide things in a way that were ill-fitting for society, whereas the current administration, you could easily make the case that it is as public an attempt to create some malevolent action across every level of society.
Yeah, well, I think I put today's numbers in our notes about, we've got 43,000 people who have tested positive, new cases today, over 43,000 people. 623 people died. 23 in the White House have tested positive. The Joint Chiefs of Staff are quarantining because Admiral Charles Ray has tested positive for coronavirus. So, and that's with 210,000 Americans that have died from coronavirus, which is more than the past 5 years combined for flu deaths. It's outpaced heart disease for deaths as well. So it's bad. And then for Trump to come out and say, don't let it dominate your life. It's no big deal. It's like the flu. It's repugnant.
I realized I didn't copy it in. I thought I saw something earlier today that was talking about, for the year 2020, the only two things that were going to be on track to potentially be more deadly than COVID in the United States were cancer and heart disease.
I think COVID is now a killer of more Americans than heart disease, which is normally the top killer in the United States.
Yeah, that'll be something I will at least glance and see what headlines I may have seen.
Confirm that, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I won't spend a lot of time researching it because I realistically, if you're listening to us, I would hope that you at least understand the ramifications of how COVID can affect you and those around you, and the fact that it's serious. And if you're listening to us and you don't believe it's serious, then I absolutely invite you to go somewhere else.
Oh, man.
I was just going to say, I don't have time for people who don't believe it's any worse than, the flu.
Yeah, yeah. So what do you think about Trump's plan to debate next week?
I'm not surprised. I think he knows that postponing or reshuffling it just hurts his numbers worse. And I think that it's pretty clear every action that he has taken, even during the course of being treated at Walter Reed for COVID, has been with the mindset of trying to swing popular vote back in his favor.
Yeah, I've also thought that I don't think it's a bluff, because I think he would actually go through it. But I think that if he doesn't test negative, Biden's not going to show. He's gonna cancel. He's like, I'm not coming, because he's a smart enough man to do that. And
see, I would hope that the commission steps in and says you must have a negative test prior to the debate, or the debate will not continue. Like, I really don't want it to be a candidate can make that decision. I think the commission should be the ones to step in and publicly denounce it.
Yeah, they need to say that ahead of time, like well ahead of time. Then there's also the case that with this disease, it's tricky, and there's the possibility that he will be incapacitated and cannot attend, like physically will not be able to attend. I think a couple of like these, at this point it's anecdotal, but just looking at a couple of cases, one that everyone could easily see is the progression of the disease in Herman Cain. There's a lot of, I think there's a lot of like, he's doing better. And then like there's like, I remember a tweet from his account, and it said he was doing great, looking good. And then 2 days later he passed away. And watching what happened to my father, I can certainly relate to that. There was a lot of times where the information that was given to my family and I about his condition, it looked promising, and then it was very much like a roller coaster, and after 3 or 4 weeks he passed away. And so it's just like, it's hard to know. One thing that Trump was privileged to was some experimental medicine that I think only 10 people outside of trials have received, and so that's certainly very different than most people. Certainly different than Herman Cain or my father, but it's gonna be something that we see play out in the next 5 to 7 days.
Yeah, prior to us recording, and part of why it took me a few minutes extra to get set up, I was watching a clip from the Colbert Show talking about the clip was just talking about Trump and COVID and how disastrous, from a leadership perspective, everything about him and the situation has been. But one of the things that was a key takeaway that I've seen reiterated in a couple of other places is, as the President of the United States at Walter Reed, he had access to something that nobody else is going to have access to, which is basically anything and everything the medical community thinks could be appropriate as a treatment, whether experimental or not. And it is a level of care that would not be experienced by anybody outside of maybe another couple of people at the top levels of government.
Yes. And his Supreme Court nominee is one that will begin to try to dismantle healthcare for 100 million Americans. So there's that.
Well, and just to add icing to the cake, his Supreme Court nominee and the party they threw for her at the White House was the super spreader event that has infected a significant amount of the people around.
Yeah.
It's what happens when you don't pay attention to science.
That's right. It's not a respecter of persons. So it's a virus. It's a mechanism of nature that attacks without any prejudice.
It's like I keep trying to think of ways to describe my intense levels of disdain for everything that the administration stands for and still remain polite. And it's really difficult to do so, because this is currently, assuming no other changes, this is the worst possible scenario for rational thinking people who understand science to have as an example at the top of government.
I 100% agree. I've actually not even kept up a pretense of politeness. And I've been asked, like, where's your humanity? And I was just like, my humanity was consumed by Trump's approval of neo-Nazis and white supremacists, the caging of migrant children, a Muslim travel ban, an attempt to penalize sanctuary cities, calling John McCain a loser for being a POW, mocking Dr. Blasey Ford, appointing Brett Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court, signing the Keystone XL pipeline. Few reasons why I have no politeness or feelings of...
And that barely scratches the surface.
It's the list could go. I mean, the list could go on. There's almost 4 years of horrible behavior. I mean, this president has I hate when I call him president. This man has campaigned more than any other person in his position before. I remember when people would talk about how often Obama would take vacation, and then when compared to George W. Bush, it was significantly less vacation time than him. But, Trump takes the cake. He is by far the worst president we've ever had.
Yeah, I can say with complete honesty that I have never felt more called to expatriate than I have over the past 3 3/4 years.
Yeah, I am the same. And what's your backup country?
Ireland, hands down. I miss when we had our European trip. We booked a little cottage on the west coast of Ireland. It's the Wild Atlantic Way, and honestly, just give me a tiny house out there and I would be so happy. I don't care if I have to farm sheep for a living. It doesn't matter what it is. I will take anything to be able to survive if I can just have a little cottage out there on the coast.
I actually was, as you were saying that, right before you said I would farm sheep for a living, my thought was like, would you be a farmer for a living? I could see you being like a really good farmer. And I don't mean that in like I don't know. I could just see you coming up with systems to like improve farming.
Yeah, honestly, I probably wouldn't even care about the farming aspect. I would find something else that would be more suited to my existing skill sets that would allow me to survive. But if that's what it came down to, I would learn it and I would do it. Just to be able to have literally a little 2-bedroom, 1-bath stone cottage on that coastline, it would be just heaven.
To be fair, if you have access to the internet, you're pretty well set. If 2020 has taught us nothing else, we can work from home a lot more than we thought we could.
Oh, definitely. I don't see myself returning to the office anytime soon now that I actually have a office at home. One of the things that we did over the past however many months it's been was we pulled everything out of the middle room that had kind of become just a oversized walk-in closet, and have it set up with the one spare TV that we've got and my desk, and so it's an office/workout room. And honestly, as long as I keep it maintained, I don't see any reason to go into the office unless I have to physically put my hands on some piece of hardware.
Yeah, I really look forward to going back to the office when it's low to no risk. And I do enjoy working from home, but I miss being around other people working. I miss the separation of home and work, and that could turn into a topic on its own. But I do miss it. I do like the plans I have for my home office. I think I'm in my 3rd iteration of plans for my home office. Part of that being I bought a L-shaped desk. And because at one point in my life I had an L-shaped desk and I loved it. I loved all the space I had, and I had plans to do, like I'll have my computer here, my soldering station over here, and so forth. And it turns out that I don't like that anymore, and that particular desk was giving me some problems with my back, just the height of it and the way I was sitting. So I actually sold it today and got what I paid for it. I thought that was pretty cool. So I'm looking forward to having a home office that I really like, that I don't have to be in that often.
Yeah, I can certainly see that. I know part of why I don't mind the home office aspect as much at this point is that I'm not dealing just with people within the local, like, Birmingham office range. And so if I'm already having to deal with people via video conference that are in, other physical locations, it just kind of makes sense that I continue to do so here instead of doing the same thing from a different office 20 miles up the road.
No, I mean, nobody can say, hey, you shouldn't be so flexible, because like the more flexibility to have, the better it is for you. So I lost my train of thought there.
Well, I think the other big thing that I like is that with the home office, I can do 3 or 4 hours in the morning, take a break, and then do 3, 4 hours, 5 hours in the afternoon, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a consistent 8, 9 hour day. Like I can spread it out over the course of 10, 11 hours and have it fit whatever else I have going on for the day, which is just kind of a nice added bonus.
I have loved that aspect of this. I have, and I hope that even being in an office, I hope that I can maintain that aspect of it, or even like have part of my day where I work from home in the morning, and then maybe go to the gym mid-morning, depending on how my meetings are scheduled, and then be in the office all afternoon. But like I love breaking up my day in a way that's convenient for me. There are many times where I have gotten logged in at night and done a bunch of work like from 9 o'clock to midnight, and I thought I felt very productive because I had no distractions, and that has been very nice. And I hope that once going back to the office is a normal thing, that can be maintained.
Yeah, I certainly think it can. I know the messaging that we've been given is that, and I assume that it's been the same for you guys. But at this point, I don't even know where the different chains of reporting separate and where they converge, etc. But the messaging we've been given is pretty much that you kind of dictate what you feel comfortable with and what you think you want your workday to look like from this point forward. And we're happy to work around it as long as you're continuing to get the job done.
Yep. Yeah, that's what I've gotten. And I know like even company-wide, they've stated those that can work from home, please, it's required. I feel like it's required to work from home if you can work from home, or it's strongly advised to work from home if you can. And so, and I remember pretty high up someone saying you don't have to come back until you feel comfortable, and I've very much appreciated that.
Yeah, that's even been iterated from. So I don't think I need to worry about bleeping any names out when you come to this level. But that's even been iterated from Greg Brown, who is the CEO of Motorola Solutions.
Yeah. So one of the things that I've actually found interesting is like when people ask me, how's working from home? And I was like, it's as far as like the ability to work from home and transitioning to that, it hasn't affected my work at all, because when it's like when I go to the office, I set my computer on my desk, and because the project managers and installers and trainers that I work with, they're all on site somewhere, everything we do is over Google Meet. And then all the configuration work I do, well, I'm either logging into a build server in a closet down the hallway, or I'm logging into servers around the country. And at home, what has changed is basically the server that I log into down the hallway is now down the road. That's really all that's changed as far as like my actual workflow.
Yeah, I think we kind of had a leg up on many companies in that regard, where everything was already technically remote, even though it was in the same building. The way you accessed it, the way you worked with it, it was all still remote, even though physically it may or may not be 100 yards or 100 miles away.
Right. As far as I was concerned, it was an internet connection away. And I actually think the build server that was in the closet is now in a data center now. I'm not sure. I don't even know where that server is anymore.
Yeah, that piece I know more about. But there's no reason to go into technical details, I suppose.
No, it doesn't matter. I turn my VPN on, I log in, I'm good to go.
So I have to take my knocks on the chin for our match day results this past week. It was ridiculously embarrassing, but I'm going to open the floor to how you reacted to the Liverpool versus Aston Villa result, if you even paid that much attention to it.
I don't know what to say. I really don't know. I really don't know what to say. The only thing I can think of is the untouchable the Untouchables legacy will remain. And I bet Tom Hanks had a good Sunday because he's a Aston Villa fan.
It was the most embarrassing performance I've seen since I have followed Liverpool, which I think says quite a bit. It was nothing but a cacophony of errors, and it felt like we're just going to give up now and see what happens for the rest of the match. And that was maybe halfway through the first half.
Oh.
Like, I don't think I have ever seen such a poor display. I mean, maybe, the half a dozen Manchester United games that I've watched, sure. My little dig, I suppose. But, it was really, it's difficult to describe. It was nothing but a match of problems or errors that were capitalized on. And fair credit to Aston Villa. They capitalized on the moments they had available to them and did so quite well.
Which is surprising to me.
I kind of initially thought that as well, but at the same time, they did spend some money to kind of bolster their weaknesses to an extent. And there's always a caveat there. But they did add some attacking power in the transfer window, and they seemed to be more cohesive aside, where we just completely, I don't know if we were not prepared for the game plan or if it was literally just compounding individual errors. Like, it's really tough to point to something specific because the entire performance was really bad. I mean, there's just no way around it. There were flashes of good from Salah and Jota, and Jota got his start because Mane tested positive for COVID. And so the front third looked pretty good most of the time. They didn't necessarily capitalize on the opportunities they had, but the rest of the field just looked bad. And that's kind of difficult to wrap your head around when it's really been the midfield and the defensive third have looked so strong and so solid for so long. That is this just a lack of preparedness, or is this just a bad game, or what? Like, it's really difficult to point to, especially when we looked pretty cohesive and good against Arsenal the previous week,
Yeah, I mean, that was a good match too. It was, I mean, I think, as I said last week, Liverpool definitely deserved to win that match, but it wasn't handed to them.
No, and they looked like they were prepared to be there, and they wanted to be there, and they were fighting for every bit of what they got. And this past week, it was almost the opposite. Even though it didn't, like, if you just watched the match as a casual observer, it didn't look like it was that bad. So it's difficult to figure out how to put it into words when I can't point to any one or two or three things even that could explain it. It was just a bad performance overall.
It's atypical to see 9 goals in a match, in any match at this level, but to see 7 goals against Liverpool, the reigning Premier League champions, and they potentially could have been the Champions League champions. I guess they still are the Champions League champions from season before last. It's kind of bizarre to see what I think is going to be viewed as a fluke as the season progresses, but it's kind of bizarre to see a fluke like this.
Yeah, I know there was an article pointing to the last time this happened. It was actually Aston Villa versus Liverpool, where Liverpool were the reigning champions in 70-something. And Villa won by, I think it was 5 goals, something like that. Like, it was reminiscent of the previous thrashing that they had received by Villa, even though it was some time removed. And that same year, Liverpool went on to win. It was the 2nd division, I think, because they were relegated, and something European and something else. Like, I'm not going to bother paying attention because I think correlations like that are just people looking for some way to make themselves feel better. But it certainly was interesting that the last time something like that happened, it was the same two teams.
Yeah, that is. It is. It's at this point, I'd call that a coincidence.
Who did you guys play? I know you said that you guys won, but what was it Sheffield?
Yeah.
See, I didn't even watch the match, and I paid enough attention to at least know who.
In my head, I had a quick moment. I was like, no, it was Fulham. No, Fulham was the first match. But yeah, it was Sheffield.
So last week you mentioned Gmail stories that we should, pull through to be a topic for this week. You want to go into that?
Gmail stories? I saw this and I thought that was your bullet point. I don't remember Gmail stories.
Yeah, so last week we were talking about, when I initially got my Gmail account, I remembered it being invite only, and so of course I jumped on the bandwagon and got my account, even though I've never really used it. And you mentioned that you had some interesting stories that you thought I had heard before.
Yes. Oh yeah. Yeah. So I did the same thing in 2006. I got an invitation to sign up for Gmail, and I did, and I used my first name my last name at gmail.com, and my last name is not unique, my last name is unique. It's Sahauna, and it's not really spelled the way it sounds. It's not phonetic, and so most people think, oh, you're the only John Sahauna. Well, it turns out I am not the only John Sahauna. In Birmingham, there's another John Sahauna, and he has the email address John K. Sahauna at gmail.com. You can email him. It's okay. But so many people, I guess, assume that if you have a Gmail account and your name is John Sahauna, you've got to be the only person with that Gmail account, and it's going to be the John.Sahauna. And so consequently, I get a lot of emails for this guy. He's related to me, but it's relatively distant. And, I don't know, maybe like 2013 or so, I would get a lot of emails, or I was getting a lot of emails from him, and I would kindly reply and say, I'm sorry, you've got the wrong person. And I kept getting emails, and so I thought, well, they're not listening to me, so I'm going to respond and correct all of their grammatical errors in the email. And that got their attention. And so that would happen. I would reply and say, please check your contacts, and you've emailed the wrong John Sahauna. And that email would often go ignored. Not always, but often. And so I would respond to the next email with a way to either, improve the language, improve the style of the writing, point out all the grammatical errors, and so forth. This got to be such a problem for the other John, not for me. It was kind of fun for me, that eventually he called me, and I was ready to talk to him. I think he sent me a message saying he wanted to talk to me on the phone. I was like, yes, this is perfect. So I had everything set up so that I could record him. And my whole goal on that conversation was to, be just like troll him just enough to keep him on the line and see what he'll say, but not get him so upset that he would hang up on me. And it's a really fun recording. But I eventually stopped doing that, and I just became... Most of the time I just ignore messages. I trash them, the ones that come for him. Occasionally I'll forward one to him. But it was a lot of fun. And one of the most interesting things that came about was, at the time, I guess he was going through a divorce, and his divorce lawyer emailed me with some information. I was like, hey man, wrong John. And again, he kept emailing me, and his ex-wife's divorce lawyer was in the chain. And at some point I started correcting his divorce lawyer's grammar, and his wife's divorce lawyer was amused by this, and we started a conversation. And then a few years later, I chose her to represent me when I went through my divorce. And so that was a lot of fun.
It's a strange turn of events.
Yeah, it was the basis for choosing my divorce lawyer. She actually did a really good job. She was very helpful.
It's kind of funny. It reminded me. So I have always used my .mac email address because I was one of those fools who signed up for the .Mac tools back when you had to pay for it, and I was going to use that email address come hell or high water.
Oh yeah, me too.
And at this point, it has paid for itself, I think, because you can't get those addresses anymore, and people are in awe now when you say @mac.com and it works. But
yeah,
I often will receive emails for a Hart at Mac, and I don't know how they managed to add the T in there, because my email address is jthart@mac.com. And so I don't know if we just share a common initial or what, but there will be oftentimes that probably both ways. I would imagine a lot of people are trying to send stuff to me that end up omitting the T, and for some reason a lot of people are sending stuff to him that end up adding the T. I don't even know if it's still an active account at this point. It just reminds me of that kind of thing, because I have received a number of emails that were destined for someone else, and it's always a consistent similar name, but it's sent to me instead of whatever their actual email address should be.
Yeah, I think one of the most interesting ones I got was somebody that was coming to visit the other John sent, intending to go to him, sent a photocopy or like a scan of a speeding ticket. I think it was a it was a ticket for having a light out. This woman from Mississippi had, I think one of her headlights was out and got pulled over in Mountain Brook for that. And she was sending a copy of the ticket to him. And I don't know why it wasn't clear. Like in the email, it wasn't clear to me why. But I got this copy of her citation. But I think it's a common mistake. I think the last interaction I had with him, my friend was going to send me some money through Venmo and accidentally sent it to him. And I reached out to him and said, hey, that money, that $10 you just got, that was for me. And he sent it back. So, I guess no hard feelings.
Yeah, hey, props on him for doing the right thing, I suppose.
Yeah. It ends with him being a good guy. Better than me.
Yeah, I'd probably keep it even if it was just him.
I mean, I think I think I would have kept it. If the roles were reversed, I probably would have kept it. Like, nope.
So I wanted to ask, I don't remember if it was on one of the episodes where we were talking about, you were thinking about the getting an Apple Watch finally, or if it was just side conversation. I'm pretty sure it was on a couple episodes back. Have you decided if you're going to end up getting one?
I haven't. I'm waiting to see Apple One Premiere. I'm waiting to see whether or not that's going to work for me, and I'm waiting to see if that works for me, how much I like the workout videos and Apple Fitness. And I'm also waiting to see what's announced a week from today. And so at any point in time, I feel like I can just go buy an Apple Watch. And so right now I'm just waiting to see what's coming through.
And so it came to mind for two reasons. One, I did end up going ahead and ordering a stainless steel Series 6.
Ooh.
That is estimated delivery October 20th to October 20th, 7th. So we'll see if I keep that order active or if I cancel it. I'll probably keep it active because, let's be honest, I really want the always-on display. As a previous watch nerd, that's the one thing I haven't been able to get past. The other thing that I found interesting, and I didn't realize this, with the new Watch OS, you can actually customize all of your ring goals, not just the move goal. So you can change the amount of exercise per day and the number of stand hours per day now, and you have not been able to do so previously. And I just thought that was a neat anecdote to add for those who may not be aware.
That's pretty cool. I think that's like if you didn't do it, if you weren't wanting that before, you may not want it now. You may want it now, but I always love when they add new features that don't change how it previously worked.
Yeah, the defaults are still set to 30 minutes of exercise per day and 12 stand hours per day. And apparently on exercise, you can pick a number from 10 to 60, I think is what I read. And for stand hours, it can be from 6 to 12 hours. So there are still some limitations, but the fact that you can adjust it a little bit more for your lifestyle and what you're actually attempting to accomplish, I think is a positive.
It is. It's. I think it's a really good idea. I wish there were more things that were configurable. And I don't mind, like, I wouldn't mind if, like, not that they're hidden, but they're deep down, like where you have to, like, really drill down into the settings or something like that. But I'm not going to say the more configurability, the better, but there are certain things that aren't configurable that I wish were configurable. I can't give you a list at the moment, but I like the ability, whether or not I will do it or not. Which kind of makes me think of, like, there's been an explosion of configurability with widgets. Have you seen this?
I have. I actually was just listening to Gruber's episode of the talk show with David Smith. I don't know if anybody actually would know the name outside of a fairly small circle of people, but the creator of Watch Smith and Widget Smith.
He's underscore, right?
Correct.
Yeah. I know it's super inside, but yeah, he's put out something that was got really popular in the mainstream with all sorts of people, and there are so many. I've seen so many YouTube. Like, I didn't hear about it until it was mentioned on another podcast that I listened to, and I had no idea. And then you go look on YouTube, and there's just so many people that I feel are fairly mainstream that are putting out tutorials on how to use Widgetsmith, and I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, I think it goes back to part of the allure of jailbreaking in previous iterations of iOS, and by previous I mean first handful of iterations, and maybe even the past couple, where most of the reason that it felt like people would jailbreak their devices was to change the appearance of the device. Most people didn't gain any real functionality by jailbreaking. They gained the ability to change the appearance of the phone. And that's a pretty massive market.
Yeah. I can remember someone I worked with that jailbroke their phone, and I think two of them really cool apps that you could get at the time were, one was an app that allowed you to tether, that allowed you to tether, like, other devices too, so that you could use your device as a hotspot. And saying that right now seems like so bizarre. Like, in my mind, I'm like fact checking myself. Like, no, this was a thing. You could not do that before. And I remember really wanting to be able to. And it wasn't, that feature wasn't added until unlimited data went away. And the other feature that was really popular were emulators, so that you could play like old Nintendo games and such on your iPhone.
And so there was a period where I jailbroke my device pretty regularly, and the only thing I did was change the appearance of the device. That was the only thing I cared for, with the exception of there was also an ability to run a full terminal as an application that I certainly appreciated and leveraged. But I wouldn't say that I was jailbreaking for that. That was more of a matter of I was jailbreaking for the customization of the appearance, and the fact that I could add this other piece was just kind of nice.
Yeah. So how often did you use the terminal on your phone?
Pretty much never. Like, as much as it was interesting, and is still interesting to a number of different reasons, or for a number of different reasons, I just don't care to try to use the terminal on the phone. Like, it's not that it doesn't work or I can't do it. It's just, if I'm in the terminal, I want a regular keyboard, and I want to actually have access to everything that I have access to on the Mac. I don't want just a terminal window that may or may not be limited by a number of different things on the phone.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of this one time I was on a plane, headed back home to New York, and I saw a guy. This was iPhone 4S. No, this was iPhone 4. He had his iPhone 4 set up he had it on a stand, and he had the compact Bluetooth keyboard sitting on his tray, and he was typing away at some document on his phone from not a full-size keyboard, but basically a laptop configuration keyboard, and it was just Bluetooth paired via Bluetooth. And I thought that was, like, so clever. Like, remember sitting there thinking that is very clever to be able to very easily slip in a small keyboard and your iPhone. It's not something you want to do like fairly regularly, but I can see how that's a great option if you want the ease of like not having to pull out a computer or even an iPad.
Did you follow any of the competitors over the early thousands? I don't remember the exact time frame, but does the Motorola Atrix ring a bell?
No.
So it was interesting from the standpoint of it actually was a phone that was sold that you could purchase a dock for, and the idea was you put the phone in the dock and it becomes an actual computer where it expects you to have a Bluetooth mouse and keyboard paired and a display for it to present a different view than what you would normally see on the phone. And so the idea was you would carry the phone, you would use it as a phone, you would have access to the different applications, etc. And then if you docked it, you had a different desktop experience. Never really caught on, but it was a fascinating idea.
Yeah, I've often had ideas like that where you have this compute device that's really small, it fits in your pocket, and you can just plug it into a thing. I think it was in science fiction for a long time. It could be a reality today. I don't think it will be because there's other reasons that there's no longer the technological barrier that keeps it from being a thing. But I think there's other marketing reasons why that's not going to be a thing.
I think it's more behavioral. We're still at a point where we expect a phone to be a phone, even though we should probably redefine that at this point. We expect a phone to be a handheld computer that happens to be able to send and receive calls.
There's a phone app.
Yeah, and we expect a tablet to have similar functionality to the phone with some enhanced functionality, and then we expect a computer to be a computer. And I don't think we're at a point mentally where we can feel comfortable with those three things coexisting in one device.
Yeah. Watching Westworld, I want the devices that they have. They have such cool devices. They have a tablet that folds into thirds, and that's very cool. And then they have like really cool phones. And I'm wondering how, I know you can't, even though that show takes place in the future, you can't necessarily predict what's going to happen in the future. But I wonder how long people will hold on to the idea. Like, I have a phone, I have a tablet, I have a computer.
Yeah, I can certainly tell you I would be happy having just a phone that I could plug into something and use like the entire full-featured Mac OS when it's docked, and then have that stripped from me and have the iOS experience on the phone when it's not docked, and know that it's one device capable of both. Like I've come to the point where I really like that concept. I just don't think we're at a point where, in general, we can accept the limitations in one use case versus the openness in the other.
Yeah, and I think as time goes on, as the kids that are growing up with iPhones and iPads, they will. I'm curious to see how they're going to react to why would I use this computer?
Right.
Go ahead.
I think we're going to get to a point where the idea of the computer that can do everything without restrictions is just kind of moot. I think we're going to reach a point where people just don't care about the other things that they might be able to do if they could tweak something, as long as they can pull an app that lets them get certain basic functionality. It doesn't matter if it's sandboxed or restricted or whatever description you want. It's just they want to do this one thing, and as long as they can do this one thing, it doesn't matter. And so I think the more restrictive iOS, iPadOS model is probably more apt for the future, because you'll have specific devices running these apps, whether it's a TV or glasses or a watch or phone or whatever, it doesn't matter. The idea is that you'll have the device that suits the experience be what you use, and you could care less about a device that is capable of presenting itself for all experiences.
Yeah. When at that point, I guess our devices become more seamless in lifestyle. Something you were saying earlier today made me think of this, and I meant to mention it just a few minutes ago, but this will be also for follow-up. But there was in the year that there was no App Store on the iPhone OS, there was a guy that made an app, and he did all of his app development for the app on a jailbroken iPod Touch. Like, he did all the compiling, everything was done on his iPod Touch. Do you recall this story at all?
Isn't that how Cydia was born?
I don't know about that. No, this was an app that was it was made. It was out in the Wild West when there was no App Store, and as soon as there was an App Store, it went into the App Store. So it wasn't in Cydia, but it was certainly on in Cydia at that point in time.
All right, so I may be thinking of something different, but it definitely rings a bell. It just may be that I'm completely misremembering kind of the path it took. But I do think that one of the things that we'll see over time is that the idea that we have of a computer that you go to do different tasks becomes irrelevant.
Yeah. Which kind of made me think of, even though it's on our notes, we can segue into the glorious 24 hours that I owned a Mac Pro this summer.
Oh, absolutely. I've heard part of the story, but let's start from the beginning.
Yeah, so I decided I was going to buy a Mac Pro, and not a new Mac Pro, and not a 2013 Mac Pro, but the refresh Mac Pro that Apple released in, I think it was refreshed in it was either 2010 or 2012, but it was the last Mac Pro in the Tower form factor prior to the current Tower form factor. It was Mac Pro 5,1. So I'm looking on eBay to see how I can get one of these, and I'm very careful because I don't want to overpay for this, and I don't want to get scammed by anybody, and not because I'm afraid of losing my money, because buy from eBay, pay through PayPal, you're covered. But I just didn't want to go through the hassle of it, and so I'm paying attention. I'm like, you know what, I want to do I want to get dual processors so that I can get maximum amount of RAM into this thing. And I came across one, and I'm like, okay, it's the right price, it's got the right specs, good to go. Because I believe the Mac Pro 4,1 versus Mac Pro 5,1, huge difference in the OSs that were supported. 5,1 had support through Mojave, and I don't know where 4,1's ended, but it was at least 2 before Mojave. It might have been Yosemite was its last supported one. And so I ordered it. It came. I unpacked it. It was lovely. I opened it up. And the first thing I wanted to do was to take the CPU tray out, and lo and behold, there's a massive dent in it, and the CPU tray could not be removed. I didn't try to force it because I knew that I was going to send it back because it was not acceptable. And then I booted it up to see how it'd run. I was just like, at least I'll just play around with it for a minute or two. And it kind of started out funny. I was like, that's a weird startup. That's not what I'm expecting to see. It booted in what looked like single user mode, and the boot process, the computer had been hacked. It had it was a 128 gigabyte hard drive on a card, a PCI card, and so it was using up one of the slots. And I was like, okay, I'm not okay with that. Why isn't it connected to SATA? And it wasn't connected to SATA because it was used to run the firmware update that was available for the Mac Pro 5,1. This was actually a 4,1. And so what would happen is you would boot it up, and instead of looking for the boot disk, it would do an EFI boot to the hard drive that was on that PCI card, and that enabled it to run Mojave. And I was like, not cool at all. This is not what it's supposed to be. I believe the processors and the RAM were the same between the two versions, because that last 5,1 was just a speed bump for processors. So the processor architecture didn't change, just the speeds. They put slightly new processors from the same whatever code name they were using. I can't remember. Whatever. What's the word I'm looking for? The
chipset.
Yeah, same chipset. So I was really disappointed with that, and so I filed a complaint. Actually, I did not even have to file. Like I went to the resolution center to see about filing a complaint. First, it says just contact your seller and see what they say. So I contact the seller and say, "Hey, you sent me the wrong Mac Pro." They're like, "Send it back, no problem." They sent me a shipping label so I could send it back, and I was like, "Okay." Like there was no argument. He knew exactly that he didn't want to, cause any upset, I guess, with eBay, or didn't want to get the attention of eBay on this one. So he was like, "Yeah, just send it back to me, no big deal." So I did, and I decided not to purchase a Mac Pro.
It's interesting that someone would go through that much of a headache, because I like the correlation that I could draw from that. I've got a relatively pristine in appearance Power Mac G4 Cube that I replaced the internals with I don't remember who the aftermarket chipset provider was at the time, but there was a different CPU that was one that you could purchase aftermarket, and a different, I think it was an updated, just upgraded RAM. Either way, like whatever I could do to make it more modern at the time, I went ahead and purchased, because I bought it, significantly later than its normal lifespan anyway, so I could get all the aftermarket parts pretty cheap. It worked. It didn't necessarily work well, and so there was a lot of finagling to get it to be to a point where it was stable. So I can only imagine that the seller in this case had to do a lot of that same kind of work. And maybe not. I mean, maybe it was a little more straightforward at that point. But I know with that G4 Cube, it took me a good 3-4 days to get it to a point where it would consistently and reliably boot and run with those aftermarket parts.
Yeah, this looked like it was like, I think once you know what you're doing, I think this looked pretty easy to do. Because he set that EFI boot. I don't like the way it showed up in at the startup screen or the boot chooser. It showed up like ASD used to show up. The EFI ASD drives showed up like that, and he was able to set that as the. I don't know if he was able to set it as the startup disk. I think that there was no startup disk and would eventually find that to boot to. Because I do recall it taking just slightly longer for it to boot. Like you'd power it on, there'd be a gray screen, and then it would turn black, and it would be a it would look like a very low resolution single user mode. Because normally single user mode can use, a lot of times it can use the full resolution of the display, which is actually really hard to use on some of the Retina displays. But yeah, I think it was one of those things. You get this card pretty cheap, put it in there, leave the rotational hard drive in the SATA bay as a bunch of storage, and good to go. So I'm assuming it's an easy process to do that, and pretty cheap to do that.
Well, it would certainly make sense based on the response of just sending a label and saying, "Yep, sure, send it back."
Mm-hmm.
But I do kind of wonder how much effort went into figuring that out up front.
Yeah, I remember one time having a computer that was a Mac Mini that made it to the GR, and I want to say the issue that it came in with was that it couldn't be updated to the most current version of the OS. And so I remember booting it up, trying to install the OS, and it wouldn't recognize it. It would tell you get a message saying that this was the OS was too new for this computer. And so I look at the specs, and I'm like, no, this is it was back when this is a time when it was like you can run a Mac Mini with this version of or this particular processor. Like it was the it put in the speed of the processor, and I was like, oh, it's got that processor in it. And because it wouldn't boot, I was like, I think I tried a second method of installing, got the same error. So I was like, okay, something's up with this. And so I went and looked and found that it was like the previous model. It just happened to be that you could take the previous iteration and get a newer chip and stick it in there. Put a newer CPU in and put it in there. So I ended up having to call the guy and say, yeah, it's not supported. He's like, no, I've got the right processor. I was like, yes. We never, I was like, Apple never made this particular revision of the Mac Mini with that processor. It's an aftermarket processor. He was like, yeah, I did do that. And I was like, okay, so that's why it won't install. I was like, you can do that. It's your computer. It's just not supported. So there's a few Macs out there that you could do this with. That number of computers gets smaller and smaller every day.
Well, I guess it depends on whether you want to take into account the Hackintosh market.
I actually would not take them into account the Hackintosh market because they are not computers manufactured by Apple. Specifically, the number of computers that Apple manufactured where it was not supported that you could change the CPU, but there was no technical limitation to it. That's the narrow region, or the narrow number of computers that could do that.
Yeah, at this point, that number is infinitesimally small. You mentioned it not too long ago. As we record, there is an Apple event in a week. So on October the 13th, there will be an event where the assumption is that new iPhones will be announced. Do you want to go into any speculation? I know I have avoided any rumors and any real detail because my big hope is just that we get back to a squared edge model reminiscent of the iPhone 4S time frame, at which point I don't care what the changes are internally, I am buying that bastard. And so I'm waiting to see the official word because I'm a big fan of the squared edges, regardless of any other change. But do you have any thoughts on what will be announced? Have you paid attention to rumors, etc.?
I haven't paid attention to rumors, and I haven't paid attention to rumors for like 5 years now. I see them from time to time. I actually get more rumor information from Rene Ritchie's YouTube channel than anywhere else now. I used to check Mac rumors, not just daily, but multiple times a day for any new rumors. And now I think in the past 5 years, I've probably looked at Mac rumors a dozen times. So I don't know many of the rumors. I think the thing that I want that won't happen is the in addition to Face ID, Touch ID, and the sleep wake button. I think that was just for the iPad. I don't think we'll see it in the iPhone. But the thing that I want that I think we're going to get are squared edges.
So what makes you think we won't see Touch ID in the phone?
It just seems too fortuitous. Like this year would be the perfect year. And I don't know that they had that in the pipeline. They certainly had it in the pipeline for the iPad, and I think that's just coincidental. I don't think it was in the pipeline for the phone.
I could certainly see that. I know I mentioned that I could see also where Touch ID and the sleep wake button was meant for the lower tier phone. And so at whatever point a new iPhone SE or competitor replacement for the SE was released, I could see it being just that it has Touch ID and it got moved to being in the sleep wake button, so that the front would present a full screen display like the other phones. I don't know that we'll see that. It seems like that's why it might have been developed, not so much that it would be developed for use in conjunction with Face ID.
Yeah. If they can get it in, that would be awesome. But if they had it planned, that would be like, all right, whoever just made that decision, it's time for you to go to Las Vegas, except for no, there's COVID. But, go ahead and play some online bets because this is your year.
I know it's not related, but it made me think of a quick sidebar rant. I have been increasingly annoyed with the fact that we live in a state that does not let me order alcohol online. And it pisses me off to no end, and I can't figure out why this antiquated law is still in the books other than pure greed.
Yeah, I don't know. But I'll tell you who's fighting to keep it that way. It's the liquor store owners and the Baptist preachers. There's an unholy alliance there where they want the same thing.
Well, I wouldn't say liquor store owners. I would make sure that we emphasize we are in a state that has a state-run set of liquor stores that other liquor store owners must also purchase through. And so liquor store owners might give the wrong impression. It is the state-run alcohol board that wants it to be consistently maintained this way so that they get their cut.
You're ruining the dream for me.
I have just decided that I need to make really good friends with someone across a border and just say to hell with it all.
Yeah. So I used to live in a dry county, or at the time that I lived in the county, it was dry. It very recently, like in the past 5 years, let me take that back. The town that I lived in, Aniana, Alabama, is the seat of a dry county, Blount County, Alabama. And a few years ago, the two most populous cities in the county are now wet, but the rest of the county is dry. And so I can remember every major road out of the county had a liquor store right there on the county line, just outside of the county, and people just like drive up, refill and head home. And so in my head, it's kind of the same thing. Go into the state, but for you, it's the state line rather than a county line.
Historically, I have never had a problem driving across state lines to get significantly better deals on specific things that I was looking for. And of course it helps that I come from a different state. So I grew up in Georgia, and we didn't have this arcane barbaric set of restrictions on being able to drink that for some reason Alabama feels necessary to impose upon people. But what I am accustomed to is being able to go to liquor store X and liquor store Y and actually shop competitive prices. And in the state of Alabama, that's not the case. You go to a state-run store, and its price list matches that of any other state-run store. And if you go to a non-state-run store, you can expect to pay more than what you would pay for the equivalent item in a state-run store, unless it's something the state-run store doesn't carry, in which case you're paying whatever rate that particular store sets, but it's still more than what you could get if you just go across the border. And so there's really not a compelling case for purchasing alcohol in the state of Alabama, except for the fact that you don't have to drive an ungodly amount of miles to get a better price. Because realistically, by the time you drive far enough and pay for gas and wear and tear on a vehicle, you're coming out relatively even. The problem is that the selection and the ability to get things that aren't on the state-run board's list of items to bring into the state is ridiculously low, whereas growing up in Georgia, pretty much get anything and everything you wanted. You just might have to go to one or two different stores to figure out who had what relationship with a vendor or who could import what and get it at a reasonable price. And it's just, I don't know. I've become increasingly frustrated with this entire setup, and the only other state that I know of for sure that has this same setup is New Jersey. I take that back. I think Pennsylvania also has state-run liquor stores.
Oh, Pennsylvania has like a whole other set of weird rules. To the extent that a lot of restaurants are bring your own beer, which is totally bizarre, considering like there's a lot of money to be made selling alcohol at your restaurant. But that's not the case in at least Philadelphia. There may be some things city specific, but I know Philadelphia has Philadelphia has restaurants that are like bring your own beer. And I was like, totally bizarre. While you were saying that, it made me think it's like every time I've gone to do something out of state, I have stopped at liquor stores to pick up things that I either couldn't get here or could get for quite a bit less out of state. And one of the things that recently got a friend of mine brought a beer that I really like. I used to be able to get this beer at one of the only beer garden in Alabama, and I went there pretty recently, and they've changed their menu again. It has not fared well since the last update, and a lot of the food and beers that I really liked from this place are no longer available, including my favorite beer that I would get at this place. And so recently a friend was visiting his family back in Oregon and happened to see that beer, and we talked about it, and I was like, oh, you got to grab a bottle for me. And he did. He gave it to me as a birthday gift. So I understand, like, if there's no market for the thing, that's why you stop selling it. But when there's a good market, I don't know, make it available, because there's tons of things that you can get from other states that I know would do very well in this state.
So I'll go ahead and go on record for the next general election where we are electing a governor. We need to organize a write-in campaign with Jesse Hart being who you write in for governor. And my entire platform is to get away from this antiquated BS surrounding the ability to get alcohol.
Ugh. Roads can go to hell, but you can get your liquor shipped to you.
Yeah, all you've got to do is go into any liquor store and ask them to order it for you, or make an arrangement. Like it's so ridiculous that I can't order alcohol online, but I can order pretty much anything and everything related to firearms online.
Yep, I guess it was one or the other.
I don't know. Like I don't even want to necessarily speculate there, because
No, it was totally a joke.
I know, but have you paid attention to any of the interviews that for the Senate race in the state?
No, but I did watch a few of the ad spots for Tommy Tuberville, and they are comical.
Yeah, it's kind of what I was getting at, is that Tuberville is obviously attempting to emulate the Trump success, I guess you could call it. Like, I hate to call it success, but I mean, realistically, he got what he wanted, so it's success.
Yeah, it's success.
And it is so terrifying on so many levels, because I expect him to win.
Oh, I do too. But Alabama fans are going to have a problem. Like, how do I vote for a former Auburn coach? Oh, but I want to vote for these values, such as they are.
Yeah, I'm really hoping this is probably the only time that I can think of that I am hoping that this ridiculous diehard devotion to a college football team pays off in spades in some way, shape, fashion, or form, and Tuberville does not get the vote.
Yeah, I mean, I can hope beyond hope to how that will happen, but I have decided that the next time that I am going to register myself as a Republican so that I can vote in their primaries. And I feel like every left-leaning American citizen that is old enough to vote should be voting and register themselves as Republicans to just make a difference, change their primaries. I want a more liberal Republican.
Were there even any options there? Like, the only runoff that I remember is between what's his name? The judge that was Roy Moore and Tuberville. I remember that runoff, and honestly, neither one worth a buck, much less a vote or anything else. But the concern there was that there's no way Roy Moore would be positive for anything, anywhere, no matter what your values are. And so Tuberville was a better choice. But was there any other choice beyond the two?
No, but see, I would have been voting for Roy Moore because I knew that he can't beat, or he wouldn't be able to beat, or rather he lost to Jones the last time.
Yeah, but losing to him the last time wouldn't be a guarantee of losing to him again.
It's true.
You know, it's one of those things where I can certainly see the logic. Like, I would think that Jones would have a tougher time winning against, or Moore would have a tougher time winning against Jones than Tuberville. But I really hope that it gets skewed drastically because there are enough Alabama fans that just vote against him because he was an Auburn coach.
Or don't vote. I mean, that's how Jones got his seat on the Senate, is because people just wouldn't vote for Roy Moore, who normally would vote for the conservative politician.
I'm telling you, from now on, if you don't want to vote, you just write Jesse Hart in the write-in column. Vote for me. I don't care what office. We'll just see what happens.
Yeah.
Worst case scenario, you get better access to booze.
At least an attempt to it.
Oh no, we'll find a way to make that happen. Like if we can get somebody in power who's willing to champion it, I don't see it not going somewhere.
Yeah, I remember when I first moved back to Alabama, I remember making a list of things that what's going to happen first, and one of them was whether or not pot was going to be legal in Alabama versus Blount County going wet. I remember those two being on my list. I think I had a list of 5 things, but I remember those two being there. And I had to come up with the fact that I came up with the idea that even though it seems like one of those is a bigger stretch than the other, there are a lot of good old boys that like to smoke. So neither one of those has happened yet. So it's still waiting to see.
Well, it depends on how you subdivide it. Medicinal marijuana has passed in the state, hasn't it?
I don't think so. I don't recall. The most recent thing that I saw is that it's been decriminalized. So you just get like a speeding ticket for possession under a certain amount. And I don't know if I don't know if that's in effect yet, but that was the last thing I saw, is that it's being decriminalized.
I mean, I'll be honest, I don't pay attention to those conversations because I just don't care. But I thought a friend of mine mentioned about a year ago that it had actually passed. They just didn't know the time frame for implementation.
Yeah, I can't speak. Can't speak to either. I can't give an affirmative or deny that. So I don't know.
And to be fair, I'm not going to waste a minute or 5 looking for it either because I just don't care enough. I'm far more concerned with my ability to get good whiskey than I am any use case for marijuana.
You think we got time for one more?
I think it depends on what we go into. So there was one thing that probably fit better earlier in the episode. There was a comic that Emily found and shared that I found humorous, even though there's technically no real reason for it to be humorous. I'm debating adding it to the post because when I finally tracked down the source, it's relatively sketchy. But I thought it was neat, so I may add it just as a visual. If somebody wants to look at it, it'll be on the RSS feed. If not, no big deal.
We can make this the after show.
Yeah, I don't know if it's really worthy of that much time, though. It was just kind of funny. The premise of the comic is that we thought that masks were temporary, and then it goes to after time, people wearing respirators as fashion statements, and then after further time, it's basically Mandalorians, and this is the way after centuries, etc. And I laughed. I thought it was good. It was certainly tongue in cheek.
Yeah.
And so I will post, when I post the episode, I'll put it in there, and anybody who's interested enough can look at it on the RSS feed. But I don't think it's worthy of really going into beyond that for an after show. I think the bigger question is whether in 20 minutes we can adequately do justice to another topic.
Well, actually, I was gonna regarding this is the way, going from masks to respirators to masks again. I kind of expect to see some things change for the rest of our lives. At least culturally, there will be some changes that this pandemic leaves with us. I remember hearing pretty early on somebody comparing mask wearing to the use of prophylactics, and how basically at least the younger millennials and the generation after them, like completely understand, or more than adequately understand the necessity of prophylactics. And I'm wondering if any sort of mask wearing will be maintained after the pandemic. It's like when you go to work, but you've got a cold, do you wear a mask because you are concerned for the well-being of your work colleagues? I could see that happening.
I mean, I think it's an interesting topic because historically, Asian cultures have been doing this for years. You know, it's very much a Western thing to be opposed to wearing a mask and not taking into account the welfare of those around you, because Western cultures emphasize individuality and the self-attainment of greater things for the self, whereas Eastern cultures tend to emphasize what is better for a cluster or group or society of people, not the self. And so a lot of the discussion about masks initially was kind of coming to the forefront. A lot of people pointed to Japan as an example where if you were sick, you wore a mask. It was just kind of the expected normal thing to do. Why wouldn't you? What is the opposition to having some level of regard for those around you? And it's been that way for at least as long as people could remember. Like it was not a novel idea in any way, shape, fashion, or form. My concern is that we are too focused on individualism and the self for that to take hold in the US. I think you would have a better chance of it taking hold in a number of European countries where there's not quite as a strong emphasis of what can I achieve, because I think that's a relatively uniquely American sentiment.
I agree. And I also would expect that culturally in Japan, seeing somebody wear a mask is like us, like, oh, that person is taking into account all the people that are around them. And it's a sign of courtesy. Whereas in the United States, it would be seen as a sign of weakness. You got sick.
Or I think over the past few months, we've seen even more so people tend to attribute it not as much with weakness as fear. And it's such a bastardization of thought that it's mind-boggling. Like, why would me wearing a mask to attempt to prevent the spread of a disease to you be fearful in any way, shape, fashion, or form? Like, I don't...
Out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah, I don't give a fuck about being afraid of it. If I was afraid of it, I just wouldn't be out and about at all. If I was trying to help reduce the spread of it, I would wear a mask and be out and about, assuming that I didn't feel sick or have some symptom. Like the fact that people can't understand that difference, I mean, it gets under my skin in a way that very few things do. Like, to the point that I really question whether I care to be associated with these people anymore in any way, shape, fashion, or form.
Yeah, I think it's uniquely American, and it has a lot to do with the people that founded this country. Like, the people that came here first, the people that have been here the longest, are people that were not able to fit into other societies in Europe. They are people that came here for certain type of economic prosperity. There are people that came here for a certain sort of certain religious freedoms, and they just did not fit in with European society. And over time, especially in the past 50 to 70 years, that ancestry that we have, coupled with being told that doctors and scientists and politicians should be trusted. They know they are the experts in their field. They know what's best for you, and the experts in the field taking advantage of the good faith that was given to them by citizens has created an anti-intellectualism that sort of got roots in the idea that if you tell me that I'm wrong, you think you're better than me. And I feel like that is the sentiment that people have when they're told that their line of thinking is not right.
I can see that argument. I don't know that I necessarily think it's quite the way to describe it. I think we've created an environment where everything is about if you work for something or if you attempt to attain something, you can obtain it. There's not an ideological alignment. And so your view is your view, and you can point to examples of your views being successful, and there's not enough challenging of views for people to realize that just because their views are successful doesn't mean that they're accurate. Because we really harp on and adhere to our opinions of things. It's rare for someone to champion fact. It's always this is how I feel it should be done, or what I think should be obtained, or what I believe should be your path, etc. And those are all very subjective. And so we look at this person who was successful, who had a similar background, and we can kind of identify with it, and we followed that path. And so anything outside of that doesn't fit what we can interpret and apply experience to. And it doesn't help when you could take any particular background and apply a success story to it, even though success stories in general are relatively small from a overall population density standpoint. It's diverse enough in this country that you can always find that example that resonates with you. And so other examples are obviously incorrect, or they aren't something that you can understand in a way that you can accept as also being appropriate. And so everything that we build up from a cultural perspective doesn't fit reality as much as it fits what we think reality should be. And that's the problem, because we're not focused on what the facts that lead to X result are. We're focused on what the story that leads to X result is. I don't know how much of that is just kind of human behavior, where the story is more fascinating than what it takes to reach that particular, end point or path along or point along a journey. But it seems to be more uniquely American to latch on to that story than pretty much everywhere else that I've attempted to kind of understand the differences. And that's not saying a lot. I mean, obviously my explorations are more European, because that's the area that I like at this point and would want to go to and visit and stay and potentially, assimilate into. So it's a relatively limited subset of cultures and societies that I have any comparison to draw. But I do think it's uniquely American that we latch on to that particular story surrounding someone's path to success instead of what it actually took for them to reach that success.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, like, the idea, it seems to me that, like, the group of people that founded this country and made this country what it was, were selected for. But there's a whole bunch of people that have come into this country that came well after those. But it's always people that are seeking a certain thing that they can't get in their home. So I feel like there's a strong natural tendency towards this type of behavior, and a strong nurturing in this country for this type of behavior. So
something that I found kind of interesting. Have you seen Hamilton since it's available on Disney Plus?
No, I have not committed to the 3 hours of watching that program.
So I at least recommended the first half. We had the opportunity to see it while we were in London, and I thought it was phenomenal. I actually was the first time I had ever been to a show, and thoroughly enjoyed it. I recognize why it is something that people find a certain level of enjoyment with. But what I found fascinating was that a number of the elements of the first half of the production was speaking to, as far as the theory and idea that was being conveyed, were just as apt now as they were then, assuming that there is any level of accuracy in historical events. And I have no reason to assume that there's not some level of accuracy. But I found it very intriguing that the first half, where it was focused more on the American pursuit of independence and the Revolutionary War, there were a number of things in the productions that I could draw direct parallels to current being a year ago at this point, but current themes and situations that just really felt poignant in a way that I couldn't describe. And so I think we can make a show out of that. I don't want to go off on a tangent, but it's interesting. Like, if you get a chance to watch it, or once you get a chance to watch it, I think we should circle back and make that a topic for a show in and of itself.
That sounds good to me. So as we approach the 2-hour mark, should we cap it?
Probably. I think the remaining couple of things that were on the show notes are going to certainly run long, and I wouldn't want to cut them too short because they're just fun conversations.
Yeah.
I think tonight was certainly more of a serious conversation than we've had previously, even though we tried to keep it lighthearted. Realistically, I mean, it's kind of what listeners should expect is we'll try to keep it lighthearted enough, but we're not going to shy away from more interesting or important subjects either. And I think with everything that we've seen over the past 3 to 5 days, it was not necessarily important for us to bring it to conversation, but to recognize that it's just kind of a sad state of affairs.
It keeps spiraling down and down. It's like there's going to be a new low. I mean, this is now our current low. There's going to be a new low. So
at least through the election. Well, actually, no. At least through the inauguration, because I think it's pretty clear that regardless of the outcome on election day, the current president is going to challenge it, regardless of what the numbers look like.
Yep.
And of course, has 3 months from the election to the time of transitioning power to whoever is elected. And I mean, there's no guarantee that somebody else is elected, and we don't have 4 more years of him anyway, in a legitimate case. So
yeah.
Either way, there's going to be another low sometime between now and 2021.
January. Yeah, I think so. That's what I'm expecting.
I don't have enough whiskey for that. I'm going to have to make another run.
Well, I will say on a good note, potentially good note. I can't even say it's a good note. It's potentially a good note. The CEOs from the pharmaceutical companies that are working on vaccines for the coronavirus are fairly confident that they will know by the end of the year whether or not there will be a successful vaccine.
I saw a headline and I couldn't decipher the article quick at a glance, so it's something I'm going to have to go back and look at. But I saw that the FDA seemingly reaffirmed their stance that there would be fairly strict safety guidelines, even though there was opposition from the White House.
They did, and honestly, it is time. I'm rehashing the beginning of this podcast, but it's time for these entities to stand up for the science that they are doing. It's important. Like, at the most, Trump will be in the White House for 4 more years. That's worst case scenario. The FDA, the CDC, they're going to be continuing, and their credibility is at stake right now. And it's time for them to stand up to the president.
Yeah, the reason I kind of mentioned it the way I did is the headline made it sound like the FDA was backing off of whatever statements, but the meat of the article was contradictory to the headline. And so at a glance, I wasn't real sure how to take that.
Clickbait.
Yeah, probably. I mean, I don't know. Like, I'm not going to do too much reading on it until there's actually something to read where there's we have a potential outline for what a legitimate vaccine looks like. Up until then, it's all theoretical, and it's not worth trying to decipher a headline versus actual, details.
Yeah, I do recall that it was something along the lines of people that are getting the trials, how long that they're going to wait, how many months they're going to wait before starting to make the vaccine widely available. So, I mean...
Yeah, that may be more what it was referencing, is that I know that there was previous communication that there would be a certain amount of time allotted, and then the FDA was kind of wishy-washy on whether that would be accurate or not. So it may be that the headline was trying to convey that the FDA was actually outlining their stance, and that certainly is what the meat of the article seemed to imply.
Well, I hope they take something from Apple's playbook. And, a few years ago, Apple stood up to the FBI and said, no, we won't unlock that iPhone for you. And so it's not like a private company hasn't stood up to the government before and said, no, we're not going to do the thing that we think is wrong. So we'll see what happens.
That reminds me, there's one other thing that I found interesting. Did you see the article where, if you look at Silicon Valley, the top 6 tech employers and donations to political campaigns. Like over 2 million, something in the neighborhood of around 2 million was donated to the Biden campaign, and less than 75,000 was donated to the Trump campaign.
Yeah.
And the majority of those donating to the Trump campaign were Microsoft employees.
Oh.
And surprisingly enough, Facebook employees made the overwhelming largest number of contributors to the Biden campaign.
Wow.
Facebook employees accounted for approximately half or a little over half of what was donated to the Biden campaign.
Wow. That kind of reminds me of I saw a picture from Microsoft. It was a bin that they had to put your iPod in. Like you could give up your iPod and get a Zune. Like they'd swap out your iPod for a Zune, and the iPod bin was sadly empty.
Given that I actually know someone, I worked with someone who had a Zune at the same time that I had an iPod, and I remember all of the frustrations they had with trying to get it to work. I'm not at all surprised.
There was a feature of the Zune called squirting. That's all I'm going to say.
All right. Well, I think the other remaining topic that we didn't get to, I think we just move to next week's show.
All right. That sounds good.
Maybe have it with a roundup of whatever is announced at the Apple event.
That will be fun. I'll talk to you later.
Have a good night.
You as well.
As always, you can reach us on Twitter at untitled_hosts with an S. We also have an Instagram account with the same name at untitled_hosts. You can send us an email at untitled.hosts@gmail.com. And you can visit the feed directly at theuntitledpodcast.com. Have a good night.